Hilton. Hi there. Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang. I am Yin Yang in California with Morsels of a Thought number 1629. I've come here this many days consecutively to bring you morsels of a thought of hopefully wisdom. Now, what I want to do is bring more virtue into the world. And when we do the right things, that's called virtue. And when we know what the right things to do are, that's called wisdom. So I want to bring in morsels of a thought, morsels of wisdom to us every day. And I am reading from a story on responsibility this morning. We were here in Sarah. Oh, Jesus Christ. Her last name is an O, and Sarah Oren Jewett. Sarah with an Horne Jewett. Sarah Oren Jewett. Okay, so we are going to go back to this part right here. The occasion was so much more important than anyone had foreseen that both the little girls were speechless. It seemed at first like going to church in new clothes. New clothes or to a funeral. They hardly knew how to behave at the beginning of a whole day of pleasure. They're going on a trip. They made grave bows at such persons of their acquaintance as happened to be straying on the road. Once or twice they stopped before a farmhouse. In other words, I think they were giving grave bows to people that they knew who were homeless. Looking back, I think that's what this story actually says. Goodness gracious. Once or twice, they stopped before a farmhouse while their father talked an inconsiderately long time with someone about the crops and the weather, and even dwelt upon town business and the doings of the selectmen, which might be talked of at any time. Why today, right? The explanations that he gave of their excursion seemed quite unnecessary. It was made entirely clear that he had a little business to do at Topham Corners and thought he had better give the little girls a ride. They had been very steady at school, and he had finished planting, and they could take the day as well as not. Soon, however, they all felt as if such an excursion were an everyday affair, and Susan Ellen began to ask eager questions while Katy sat silently apart. Katy's the younger sister, enjoying herself as she had never done before. She never had done before. She liked to see the strange houses and the children who belonged to them. It was delightful to find flowers that she knew growing all along the road, no matter how far she went from home. Each small homestead looked its best and pleasantest and shared the exquisite beauty that early summer made, shared the luxury of greenness and floweriness that decked the rural world. There was an early peony or a late lilac in almost every dooryard. Now, I have to remind you that I am reading from William J. Bennett, The Book of Virtues. I forgot to put the book stand up here and make sure that you could see that it's this book. Maybe I can. Maybe I can. Maybe I can. Okay. Anyway, that's not a break. That's not an intentional break. Okay. So it was 17 miles to Topham. After a while, they seemed very far from home, having left the hills far behind and descended to a great level country with fewer tracts of woodland and wider fields where the crops were much more forward. The houses were all painted and the roads were smoother and wider. It had been so pleasant driving along that Katy dreaded going into the strange town when she first caught sight of it, though Susan Ellen kept asking with bold fretfulness if they were not almost there. In other words, they're going into a nicer neighborhood, and Katy is a little quiet. They counted the steeples of 4 churches, and their father presently showed them the Topham Academy, where their grandmother once went to school, and told them that perhaps some day they would go there too. Katie's heart gave a strange leap. It was such a tremendous thing to think of, but instantly the suggestion was transformed for her into one of the certainties of life. Oh, I'm going to go there. Grandma went there. She looked with solemn awe at the tall belfry and the long rows of windows in the front of the academy, there where it stood high and white among the clustering trees. She hoped that they were going to drive by, but something forbade her taking the responsibility of saying so. Soon the children found themselves among the crowded village houses. Their father turned to look at them with affectionate solicitude. Now, sit up straight and appear pretty, he whispered to them. We're among the best people now, and I want folks to think well of you. I guess we're as good as they be, remarked Susan Ellen, looking at some innocent passers-by with dark suspicion. But Katy tried indeed to sit straight and folded her hands prettily on her lap, and wished with all her heart to be pleasing for her father's sake. Just then an elderly woman saw the wagon and the sedate party it carried, and smiled so kindly that it seemed to Katy as if Topham Corners had welcomed and received them. She smiled back again as if this hospitable person were an old friend, and entirely forgot that the eyes of all Topham had been upon her. There now, we're coming to an elegant house that I want you to see. You'll never forget it, said John Hilton. It's where Judge Masterson lives, the great lawyer, the the handsomest house in the country, everybody says. This is a story on responsibility in the Book of Virtues that's compiled by William J. Bennett. William J. Bennett was a classmate of my mom's best friend, Hazel Hagland, and Hilton Holiday. It's called The Hiltons' Holiday by Sarah Oren Jewett. I will read you the intro just so that as a reminder. This story is about the most fundamental of parental responsibilities, spending time with children. Here we find two parents doing their best to instruct their daughters in matters of right conduct. We find the teaching through example of civility, politeness, remembrance of old friends, and thoughtfulness for loved ones. And we discover that in the observance of these daily duties, we win happiness. According to Willa Cather, this was Sarah Oren Jewett's 1849 to 1909 favorite story. Do you know him, father? Said Sue Ellen about the lawyer in the handsomest house in the country. I do, answered John Hilton proudly. Him and my mother went to school together in their young days and were always called the two best scholars of their time. The judge called to see her once. He stopped to our house to see her when I was a boy. And then some years ago, you've heard me tell how I was on the jury. And when he heard my name spoken, he looked at me sharp and asked if I want the son of Catherine Wynne, and spoke most beautiful of your grandmother and how well he remembered their young days together. I I like to hear about that, said Katy. She had it pretty hard, I'm afraid, up on the old farm. She keeping school in our district when father married her. That's the main reason I backed him down when they wanted to tear the old schoolhouse all to pieces, confided John Hilton, turning eagerly. They all say she lived longer up here on the hill than she could anywhere, but she never had her health. I want but a boy when she died. Father and me lived alone afterward until the time your mother come. 'Twas a good while, too. I want married, so young as some. 'Twas lonesome, I tell you. Father was plumb discouraged, losing of his wife and her long sickness and all set him back. And we'd work all day on the land and never say a word. I suppose 'tis being so lonesome early in life that makes me so pleased to have some nice girls growing up round me now. There was a tone in her father's voice that drew Katy's heart toward him with new affection. She dimly understood, but Susan Ellen was less interested. They had often heard this story before, but the one To one child it was always new, and to the other, old. Susan Ellen was apt to think it tiresome to hear about her grandmother, who, being dead, was hardly worth talking about. "There's Judge Masterson's place," said their father in an everyday manner, as they turned a corner and came into full view of the beautiful old white house standing behind its green trees and terraces and lawns. The children had never imagined anything so stately and fine, and even Sue Ellen exclaimed with pleasure. At that moment they saw an old gentleman who carried himself with great dignity, coming slowly down the wide box-bordered path toward the gate. "There he is now. There is the judge," whispered John Hilton excitedly, reining his horse quickly to the green roadside. "He's going downtown to his office. We can wait right here and see him. I can't expect him to remember me. It's good. It's been a good many years. Now you are going to see the great Judge Masterson." There was a quiver of expectation in their hearts. The judge stopped at his gate, hesitating a moment before he lifted the latch and glanced up the street at the country wagon with its two prim little girls on the back seat and the eager man who drove. They seemed to be waiting for something. The old horse was nibbling at the fresh roadside grass. The judge was used to being looked at with interest and responded now with a smile as he came out to the sidewalk and unexpectedly turned their way. Then he suddenly lifted his hat with grave politeness and came directly toward them. "Good morning, Mr. Hilton," he said. "I am very glad to see you, sir." And Mr. Hilton, the little girl's own father, took off his hat with equal courtesy and bent forward to shake hands. Susan Ellen cowered and wished herself away, but little Katy sat straighter than ever, with joy in her father's pride and pleasure shining in her pale flower-like little face. "These are your daughters, I am sure," said the old gentleman kindly, taking Sue Ellen's limp and reluctant hand. But when he looked at Katy, his face brightened. "How she recalls your mother!" he said with great feeling. "I am glad to see this dear child. You must come to see me with your father, my dear," he added, still looking at her. "Bring both the little girls and let them run about the old garden. The cherries are just getting ripe," said Judge Masterson hospitably. "Perhaps you will have some time to stop this afternoon as you go home?" "I should call it a great pleasure if you would come and see us again sometime. You may be driving our way, sir," said John Hilton. "Not very often in these days," answered the old judge. "I thank you for the kind invitation. I should like to see the fine view again from your hill westward. Can I serve you in any way while you are in town? Goodbye, my little friends." Then they parted, but not before Katy, the shy Katy, whose hand the judge still held unconsciously while he spoke, had reached forward as he said goodbye and lifted her face to kiss him. She could not have told why, except that she felt drawn to something in the serious, worn face. For the first time in her life, the child had felt the charm of manners. Perhaps she owned a kinship between that which made him what he was and the spark of nobleness and purity in her own simple soul. She turned again and again to look back at him as they drove away. "Now you have seen one of the first gentlemen in the country," said their father. "It was worth coming twice as far." But he did not say any more, nor turn as usual to look in the children's faces. In the chief business street of Topham, a great many country wagons like the Hiltonses were fastened to the posts, and there seemed to our holiday makers to be a great deal of noise and excitement. "Now, I've got to do my errands, and we can let the horse rest and feed," said John Hilton. "I'll slip his headstall right off and put on his halter. I'm going to buy him a real good treat of oats. First, we'll go and buy me my straw hat. I feel as this one looked as a bit past to wear I feel as if this one looked a little past to wear in Topham. We'll buy the things we want, and then we'll walk all along the street so you can look in the windows and see the handsome things same's your mother likes to. What 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 was it mother told you about your shawls?" "To take 'em off and carry 'em over our arms," piped Susan Ellen without comment, but in the interest of alighting and finding themselves afoot upon the pavement, the shawls were forgotten. The children stood at the doorway of a shop while their father went inside, and they tried to see what the Topham shapes of bonnets were like, as their mother had advised them, but everything was exciting and confusing. and they could arrive at no decision. When Mr. Hilton came out with a hat in his hand to be seen in a better light, Katy whispered that she wished he would buy a shiny one like Judge Masterson's, but her father only smiled and shook his head. And said that they were plain folks, he and Katy. They were there were dry goods for sale in the same shop, and a young clerk who was measuring linen kindly pulled off some pretty labels with gilded edges and gay pictures and gave them to the little girls to their exceeding joy. He may have had small sisters at home, this friendly lad, for he took pains to find two pretty blue boxes besides and was rewarded by their beaming gratitude. So we're reading Morsels of a Thought, number 1629. We're in the Book of Virtues by William J. Bennett, who is the editor and compiler, and the story is by Sarah Oren Jewett, O-R-N-E, Jewett, Jewett, Sarah with an H. It's called The Hiltons' Holiday. It was a famous day. They even became used to seeing so many people pass. The village was full of its morning activity, and Susan Ellen gained a new respect for her father and an increased sense of her own consequence, because even in Topham, several persons knew him and called him familiarly by name. The meeting with an old man who had once been a neighbor seemed to give Mr. Hilton the greatest pleasure. The old man called to them from a house doorway as they were passing, and they all went in. The children seated themselves wearily on the wooden step, but their father shook his old friend eagerly by the hand and declared that he was delighted to see him so well and enjoying the fine weather. Oh, yes, said the old man in a feeble, quavering voice. I'm astonished and well for my age. I don't complain, John. I don't complain. They talked longer. They talked long together of people whom they had known in the past, and Katy, being a little tired, was glad to rest and sat still with her hands folded, looking about the front yard. There were some kinds of flowers that she had never seen before. There were some kinds of flowers that she never had seen before. This is the one that looks like my mother, her father said, and touched Katy's shoulder to remind her to stand up and let herself be seen. Judge Masterson saw the resemblance. We met him at his gate this morning. Yes, she certain does look like your mother, John, said the old man, looking pleasantly at Katy, who found that she liked him better than at first. She does, certain. The best of young folks is they remind us of the old ones. 'Tis natural to cling to life, folks say, but for me, I get impatient at times. Most everybody's gone now, and I want to be going to something before me, and I want to have it over with. I want to be there long on the rest of the folks. I expect to last quite a while, though. I may see you a couple times more, John. This old man says he's ready to go on. John Hilton responded cheerfully, and the children were urged to pick some flowers. The old man awed him with his impatience to be gone. What? The old man awed them with his impatience to be gone, to die. There was such a town full of people about him, and he seemed as lonely as if he were the last survivor of a former world. Until that moment, they had felt as if everything were just beginning. Now, I want to buy something pretty for your mother, said Mr. Hilton, as they went soberly away down the street, the children keeping fast hold of his hands. By now, the old house will have eat his dinner. Oops. By now, the old horse will have eat his dinner and had a good rest. So, pretty soon, we can jog along home. I'm going to take you round by the academy and the old North Meeting House where Dr. Barstow used to preach. Can't you think of something that your mother'd want? He asked suddenly, confronted by a man's difficulty of choice. She was talking about wanting a new pepper box one day. The top of the old one won't stay on, suggested Susan Ellen with delightful readiness. Can't we have some candy, Father? Yes, ma'am, said John Hilton, smiling and swinging her hand to and fro as they walked. I feel as if some would be good myself. What's all this? They were passing a photographer's doorway with its enticing array of portraits. I do declare, he exclaimed excitedly, I'm going to have our pictures taken. 'Twill please your mother more in a little. This was perhaps the greatest triumph of the day, except the delightful meeting with the judge. They sat in a row with the father in the middle, and there was no doubt as to the excellence of the likeness. The best hats had to be taken off because they cast a shadow, but they were not missed as their owners had feared. Both Susan, Ellen, and Katy looked their brightest and best. Their eager young faces would forever shine there. The joy of the holiday was mirrored in the little picture. They did not know why their father was so pleased with it. They would not know until age had dowered them with the riches of association and remembrance. Just at nightfall, the Hiltons reached home again, and tired out and happy. Katy had climbed over into the front seat beside her father because that was always her place when they went to church on Sundays. It was a cool evening. There was a fresh sea wind that brought a light mist with it, and the sky was fast growing cloudy. Somehow the children looked different. It seemed to their mother as if they had grown older and taller since they went away in the morning, and as if they belonged to the town now as much to the country. The greatness of their day's experience had left her far behind. The day had been silent and lonely without them. She had their supper ready and been watching anxiously ever since 5 o'clock. As for the children themselves, they had little to say at first. They had eaten their luncheon early on the way to Topham. Susan Ellen was childishly cross, but Katy was pathetic and wan. They could hardly wait to show the picture, and their mother was as much pleased as everybody had expected. There, what did make you wear your shawls? She exclaimed a moment afterward reproachfully. You ain't been warm all day long. I wanted folks to see how pretty your new dresses was. If I did make 'em, well, I wish more'n ever now I'd gone and seen to you. And here's the pepper box, said Katy in a pleased, unconscious tone. That really is what I call beautiful, said Mrs. Hilton after a long and doubtful look. Our other one was only 10. I never did look so high as a chiny one with flowers, but I can get us another any time for every day. That's a proper hat, as good as you could have got, John. Where's your new hoe? She asked as she came forward from the barn, smiling with satisfaction. I declare to Moses if I didn't forget all about it, meekly acknowledged the leader of the great excursion. That and my yellow turnip seed, too. They went to clean out of my head. There were so many other things to think of. But 'tain't no sort of matter. I can get a hoe just as well to Iris Beads. His wife could not help laughing. You and the little girls have had a great time. That they was full of wonder to me about everything, and I expect they'll talk about it for a week. I guess we was right about having 'em see something more of the world. Yes, answered John Hilton with humility. Yes, we did have a beautiful day. I didn't expect so much. They looked as nice as anybody and appeared so modest and pretty. The little girls will remember it perhaps, and I guess they won't never forget this day they had along a father. It was evening again. The frogs were piping in the lower meadows, and in the woods higher up the great hill, a little owl began to hoot. The sea air, salt and heavy, was blowing in our country at the end of the hot, bright day. A lamp was lighted in the house. The happy children were talking together, and supper was waiting. The father and mother lingered for a moment outside and looked down over the shadowy fields. Then they went in without speaking. The great day was over, and they shut the door. So that was responsibility. The father taking the children out and spending some time with them, and they will remember it forever, even though they wore their shawls instead of showing off their pretty dresses that their mother had made and they were wearing. Okay, so I will see you again tomorrow for another Rules Day, and you have a great, great day. I hope to inspire you with great wisdom every morning to have a great day, to know the right things to do for yourselves and to do them for virtue. Okay, old Kinderheck. Bye bye.